Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, presented by Zwift, the online cycling platform that makes training fun. For the second rest day recap of this year's Tour de France, the race second week went pretty quickly from my perspective. We're going to recap all of the jersey standings as well as going through all the remaining stages, including an in-depth preview of tomorrow's stage, the Corona test news, and a look at the relative strength or weakness of Ineos Jumbo and UAE. But the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift kicks off this Sunday on the 24th of July, back-to-back with the men's race. And Zwift and ourselves are calling on all cycling fans to watch the Femme. Myself and Benji will be in Paris. I'm even going to the TT in Rocamadour, actually, because it's en route from Andorra. We'll be in Paris to bring you the coverage live with our podcast on location on the Champs-Élysées. So make sure you're tuning into the recaps from the 24th to the 31st of July. All of that week. It's a little bit longer than a week to watch the Fam for the rest of July because, the cycling just keeps going for the whole month, which is awesome. Thanks, as always, to Zwift for supporting the podcast. At the moment, GC, Jonas Vingegaard, 2:22 ahead of Pogacar, 2:43 ahead of Thomas in third, Bardet in fourth on 3:01. Yates, Adam, not Simon, on Ineos 4:06. Maybe they sub in Simon for the third week. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, Simon Yates, third week, no good. Quintana in sixth, 4:15. Menkes, 4:24 and seventh. Same as Gaudu. And then a big gap of 4.5 minutes to Pidcock in ninth. So fifth, sixth, seventh are separated by 18 seconds. And fifth to eighth are separated by 18 seconds. And that big gap to Pidcock in ninth. Then another gap of a minute 10 to Mas in 10th. Vlasov on 11th and 10:32. So the five of the top 10 is still on between like Mas, Vlasov, Lashenko, Pidcock, and Menkes, and Gaudu, to be honest, because he's had some bad days. But 2:22, Benji, given what we saw in the Pyrenees last year, is a pretty handsome gap because Jonas and Pogacar were pretty much inseparable for that third week.
Yes, certainly. There was not much difference between them, but that doesn't make it that there can't be difference in this third week because, like you mentioned in the intro, we'll talk about the strengths of each team, and UAE must have had a bit of bad luck in week one with reducement of two riders in their team, but the same happened to Jumbo in week two. So we've got a clear balancing a bit because I swear, before Kruijswijk and Roglic were out, even though Roglic wasn't the big factor here, Kruijswijk is, then I would have said, oh, Jumbo can easily control anything that happens. But with the reduction of Kruijswijk from the team, with Benoit not sure whether he's okay after the crash he had on the Carcassonne stage, with Jonas having hit his shoulder, not sure what the consequences there are, but they don't look to be too majestic, which is probably a good thing for the lad. Like, it does reduce my trust a bit in Jumbo's control of this third week, and that might spice things up and will make for a better third week for the entertainment value, I'd say.
Kruijswijk's a huge loss, but I would say you need more teammates when you want to attack than if you want to defend. So if you want to make the race extremely hard, like Ineos en Ventoux, or have Kruijswijk pace on Galibier to keep the pace up on the Grenoble stage, you need more teammates. To defend, I mean, like the thing is, Benji, like how are Micah, McNulty, and Soler going to drop Jonas or put him under pressure? Like if this was Pog against Thomas, then Micah's a real threat because Micah can fully redline Thomas and on a steep climb like Altacam. I don't think he can do the same to Jonas. In fact, he set up Jonas on Grenoble. That doesn't mean the loss of Kruijswijk isn't huge. That's mainly because Sepp Kuss is inconsistent. And for example, on the Grenoble stage, he wasn't that great. And then the next day, he was unbelievably good on Alpe d'Huez. And last year, I remember something similar. Ventoux stage, he wasn't there. Came good on stage 15 in Andorra. And then he was really good for Jonas against Carapaz on maybe Ardennes.
But does that perhaps create a strategy towards isolating Jonas instead of trying to hurt Jonas with the riders that UAE has. For example, they've got limited riders. My aim, if I was anyone regarding management of that team, I'd look into, okay, how can we best separate the domestiques of Vingegaard from Vingegaard itself so that Pogacar can do a 1v1 versus Vingegaard, but not necessarily make it as hard as Granol, for example, where it really hurt Pogacar instead. And I'd argue that Micah can redline a Sepkus or something because we've seen it on the Granal stage where the harder the stage initially is, it feels like the worse because it's on the final climb. Does that also make sense, you
And on
think?
Croix-Neuve, McNulty and Micah dropped Kreuzweig and Koos on the
Yeah.
really steep stuff too, like the short, punchy efforts. Koos more of a diesel, even though he's like really skinny. He not actually a short, sharp guy. So yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. But Pogacar needs to take 2:22, or he okay. Well, it all depends on the TT. And so let's start from the end to steal Dan Bigham's book's title. The TT is 40 and a half kilometers. I did some napkin math. I think it's about 10 and a half meters of climbing per kilometer, about 430. And the Planche de Belfi TT, this is not. That had 960 or so meters of climbing, 2.5 times the amount of climbing per kilometer compared to this. So and it was shorter, like 36 Ks. So this is a significantly easier time trial from a climbing perspective. That's important because Roglic lost 66% of his time to Pogacar in 33% of
Yeah,
the TT. I think it's a TT time.
yes, but I do want to add to that that I think it's perhaps less about the actual physical parkour in that sense, but more about the mental consequences of that parkour. For example, if you've got a flat run in of 66% of the parkour is flat, then you've got Planche de Belfi for the latter part, then if you actually get in trouble on Planche Belfier, you're gonna lose loads of time on that uphill battle to the line because that's the last part of the time trial. That's the worst part to be in. And in this Rocamadour time trial, you notice that the last part is punchy but has descent, so allows for some recovery as well there. While Planche Belfier didn't have that, so I think for the mental strength of a rider that is suffering in the latter part of this time trial, not be as it might not be as easy to completely choke this time trial. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's not. Even if Jonas has a terrible day, he won't be losing 2 minutes like Roglic. Famous last words. Because if you look at but what's their expected performance? And you look at stage 5 last year, which is actually very similar that TT to this year's TT. I believe it was cool conditions and drizzly. Pogacar won that TT. I think it had about 11 and a half meters of climbing per kilometer, which is very similar amount to this TT. He won it and he put 27 seconds or so around that into Jonas, but it was a shorter time trial. So if you extrapolate that time loss to the actual kilometers we have here, it'd be about a 40-second time loss. So I'm expecting Jonas, who's also, by the way, better than last year. Like his whole power curve has shifted, so it's not the same rider. Like we saw that on Croix-Neuve on stage 14. And let's just say the expected time loss is 30 to 50 seconds. I think 1 minute is pushing the bounds of what Pogacar can do. So I would say Benji Pogacar needs to take in these stages, he needs to take 90 seconds to have a fighting chance in that TT. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. 60 to 90 seconds
60 is
is
not
what I
enough.
be
He's not taking
I've got a
123
theory.
in the TT.
I've got a
123.
theory. I've got a theory. Last year in the Vuelta, we had Haig against Yates for the podium spot, if I recall, or something related to a spot that they were fighting for. And Haig had the theory that if he went all out at the start and actually made sure that he was visibly faster in the initial part, that it actually would hurt Yates mentally, right? Is that
No, the
something that
opposite.
Pogacar could
Yates went
also pull
hard
off
trying
here?
to freak out Haig.
Oh, the other way around. Yes, you're right.
That didn't work. Maybe, but 123 is
Yeah.
No, I don't think possible. If Jonas just does a normal performance, I think he needs to take 90. Because it's not as hard as Planche de Belfi. So that's where we are. He needs to take 90. So I've started at the end, and then we have. I'll go through the profiles. Stage 16 tomorrow, 179 Ks. I think is his best opportunity to take a good amount of time on not an uphill finish. It has two major climbs, the Porte de l'Air and then the Mer de Pégur, which, so the first one is 11.5K, 7%, pure drafting climb. About, is that 20 minutes? No, a bit more. And then descent, and then straight to back to back climbs, then straight into the Pégur climb, which is a fake news climb. It says 9.5K, 7.7%, but in fact, it's like 4 kilometers at 5 kilometers at 4 to 5%, some at 6, and then a ramp of 3.6k to 11.5%. And then the last 1400 meters is not so steep. Then there's a descent, which the first, let's say 60% of it is a little bit steeper, and then it levels off, but still falls flat downhill, sort of minus 2% into Foix. 27k descent. It is extremely similar to the stage 9 of Tour de France 2020 to Lorraine,
Yeah.
where Pogacar attacked on Col de Marie Blanc. The climbs are virtually identical, actually. And there's bonification at the top. Roglic nearly chopped Pogacar, and their group went away with Bernal, Landa, Roglic. Roglic worked. Pogacar won the sprint, won the stage. They caught Hirschi, and they gapped Port and Co. I think Pog, he has a big advantage here, Benji, because that descent is shallow and he is heavier. I don't think technically he's a better descender than Jonas, but if there's even a 6-7 gap and he has a moto in front, he's going to be really hard for Jonas to bring back solo on that stage.
I think so as well. Like, if we would have seen a situation where Pogacar was in yellow in this stage, I would have said breakaway stage and perhaps no action in GC. But with the situation being the other way around, I expect Pogacar to make moves on this one, to make a move on Mu de Péguerre. And Baudelaire itself is too early for that to happen, I think, although UAE might try and isolate Jumbo a tiny bit on that, I would dare to say, although
They don't have that many
perhaps.
teammates.
Exactly.
We kind of skipped that discussion, but
Yeah.
they got Soler, McNulty, Micah as the actual people who can do something on any climb. Bjerg and Hirschi are before the climbs, controlling the
Yeah.
break if Pogacar wants the bony. Can they, do they make Soler and McNulty pace that first one full gas? And does that even hurt Sepp Kuss, first climb of the day? They're in the wheels.
I think it might even be better if they make sure that they put hard pressure on the second climb instead of already punching on the first climb, because we saw in Konev that actually put Kruijswijk and Kuss in trouble. Now Kruijswijk's not here, but McNulty pushing hard on that one climb put Kuss in trouble. So if that's the case here, if McNulty can do that on this climb as well, then Kuss is kind of put outside of the potential help of Vingegaard. Do you expect Kuss to be better on this stage?
No, it's kind of similar. I think they should do what you just said. Do the McNulty Micah 3 minute super hard lead out at the base of Pégur, and then Pogacar's got to go early. He went early on Marie Blanc. He went
Yeah.
early to Mond. That's what he will do. Now, whether he does stop start or steady pacing, I'm not sure. I thought he would do that the other day, but that's what they have to do, and that means Benji they can't pace with McNulty on the first climb. That means they have to use Soler. Unless
Yeah.
they use Bjerg. So if they're using Bjerg, then no offense to the man, but Nathan and Laporte will be in the wheels, no problem. So if they use Soler there, Benji, that means there's no one in the break for Pogacar either. And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Ineos also helped Jonas on that descent if he did get dropped too.
That's a good point because it's pretty clear that Thomas is also riding for his podium mainly to secure that. And if an opportunity arises above that, he'll try and take it. But for now, that opportunity has not arrived for Thomas. But if Pogacar is ahead, if he's in a group with Jonas on that descent line and they're like Pogacar and then Vingegaard and Thomas, then Thomas is going to be riding with the Vingegaard, in my opinion, to try and close down Pogacar. And I I just expect that to happen. They've been playing defensively for their podium the entire way through. So that's how I see it. They have used opportunities to force other GC riders to close gaps for them where possible to play clever. For example, I think on one of the stages, Thomas used Roglic to close a gap instead of himself in one of the early stages where Roglic still mattered. So he does that, but it's still podium fight for him. So Yeah, I agree. He will chase down Pogacar because Pogacar is his competitor for the second spot in GC as well. So that's
And
certainly
if
something
Bardet's
he'll be
dropped.
looking at. What, sorry?
And if Bardet and Gudu are dropped
Yeah,
as well, I think
certainly.
Thomas should keep the pace on to protect in
Or
case he has a bad day in the Pyrenees proper.
if Bardet is ahead, but I fail to see how Bardet is going to drop Vingegaard, despite he's pretty good on steeper sections, but I swear on Coinave he was a bit
Nah,
weaker than I
and Marie
expected.
Blanc, he got dropped and came back. They cannot respond to the
Hmm.
initial hard
Yeah,
acceleration. He might come back. If I was Pogacar, I might try a different strategy on Pagure and try and let them come back. Let Godou, Bardet, Thomas come back, Yates. If they attack, I don't know, maybe Jonas makes a mistake. Like I would just try and use the other guys as your teammates. I think if Pogacar just does steady pace, keeps everyone else behind, Jonas in the wheel, it's going to be tough to do anything on this finish, particularly without someone up the road, which we've just done, tried to work through the stage. He doesn't have
yeah.
enough riders.
Yeah, and we've noticed in the last like 2 weeks that he clearly has the better acceleration, although it seems to be getting weaker versus Vingegaard than initially. Because I swear week one Pogacar had better acceleration than week two Pogacar based on the finishes that we saw. So I think the benefit that he can get is if he can get that initial separation. That's what I'm looking for when it comes to Pogacar. And I think he's more likely going to get that with a start stop thing than a steady pace on a climb.
Yeah, and also from behind Jonas. So let Bardet Guru go, and maybe Jonas is like, "Oh, I'll follow them." Then you're in behind. Now you creating a slightly more advantageous situation. But yeah, I still think it's going to be tough for him to stay away. I think Jumbo, there will be a fight for the break. There's some rolling climbs at the start. A lot depends on Tadej Benoot. If
Yeah.
Tadej Benoot's in bad shape, it becomes a lot harder to send Wout van Aert in the breakaway or vice versa. So it
Do,
really a lot hinges on him.
Do you think it's okay to send the riders in the breakaway when you're leader in GC? Because we hear a lot that, oh, if you've got the yellow jersey, don't send riders in the breakaway, keep them all with the yellow jersey. But I'm mixed about that because I see value in some situations to actually have someone in the breakaway, even if you're in yellow, as long as you still have enough support in the peloton in case of a puncture and so forth.
Well, yeah, like you've got in the first 80 Ks before the land climb, you've got like Van Hooijdonk, Laporte, Koos, Benoit shouldn't be dropped, and it's flat. And what Bjerg Hirschi will be pacing maybe, or you can have Van Hooijdonk on the front pacing at 0 watts per kilo if no one else wants to do it. So I don't really. It seems like there's plenty of riders to help before that section, and I even think if Benoit's in okay shape, I don't really see how he drops on that first long climb either. To be honest, he's been climbing fine.
Yeah.
Ineos though, Benji, surely this is where I would say this is where they should play Thomas and Yates, but they first of all they got dropped on to Mons, sorry, and second of all they seem to be going for podium. But the end of this climb is kind of shallow. Wouldn't this be the stage to get someone in the break and try and get some time back with Yates on the downhill?
I don't know. A thing I was thinking about is in our earlier discussions of should Jumbo put a rider in the breakaway or will UAE have a rider in the breakaway? In case of a situation where both of those teams have a rider in the breakaway and Ineos puts Pidcock in there as well, that like the Jumbo and in UAE rider in the break will completely stop working,
They
but
won't work with Pidcock.
it does put them in a situation where they need to change something, eh?
I know, yeah. The problem is that flat, and the problem is also Castroviejo, Van Baal, and Ganna's shape is not top. Even Martinez, I don't think Martinez, like he was on the front at the end yesterday, he's looking a bit better. But Benji, I still don't think he's reducing a group like of GC guys. He got dropped hard on Kronov. Like, I don't really know how they can use Martinez like that either. So it's tough for them. It all depends on what Yates and Thomas actually want. All indications suggest podium for Thomas, and Yates is just kind of surviving, and they'll probably be distanced at the base of Pagure. But yeah, hopefully it's an interesting stage. I think it definitely is one to see, as Benji said, with Pogacar behind, he has to take all opportunities. The stage after is short. No, sorry, it's not. 100. Have I skipped stage 17 in my thing? Sorry, I went straight to Alticam. I'll bring up stage 17, which is to Perigord. 130.5 Ks. It is short, actually, but it has 4 climbs, all sandwiched together. Col d'Aspin, 12K, 6.5%, and then the Orquet, which is 8.6 Ks, 5%. First 4 Ks of that are 7%, I think. So there's a little descent in there. Descent, short valley. Then the Col de Valoron-Azé, 8.5 K, 7.7%, 20-minute climb. This is Pogacar territory. Descent, short valley through Ludenville and then up to Perigord, which is 8.1 K, 7.2%. But I think it's steeper than that.
Yeah.
I think there's a like a really steep 400-meter finish, like super steep, where so the average is over 8%. And temperatures, by the way, for this stage tomorrow is supposed to be warm with maybe thunderstorms. Ludenville, it looks like 21 degrees at the base, but sunny. So just that's not cold. That's just, to me, that's just normal mild conditions that doesn't benefit Pogacar, doesn't benefit Jonas. It's just normal racing weather, in my opinion.
Yes, certainly. And I remember this good finish from, was it 2017, where I think George Bennett had like a small gap on a group of favorites. And that last steep section obviously does fit Bennett quite a bit, but the tempo at which the others were coming, Froome was in yellow, Bardet and Aru were in that year where they were actually looking pretty damn good. And then Bardet ended up winning that, but the fight on that last 400-meter steep section, it's worth watching, I tell you. And it's really nice to see on screen. They can really visualize it well. So I'm looking forward to that final stretch. But if it comes down to that final stretch, then Pogacar is not gaining enough time on this. Even though I do think that, I don't know, the
No,
finish is
even if
pretty
Jonas
steep, eh?
quote unquote cracks. So
Yeah,
Froome cracked, right? He was like walking up the climb,
yeah,
lost the yellow jersey to Aru. He lost, I think, 22 seconds to Bardet and
yeah,
less to Aru. 22 seconds on each of Autocamen is not enough. I just did the maths. I said he needs at least 75 seconds, at least
yeah.
75. And I think 90 to even have a chance in the TT. And 22 is not enough. So he has to go earlier, Benji. I think he
Yeah.
has to go on the Laurent climb before.
Oh, that's there's a steep section at the end of Laurent Azé as well, but it's gonna be difficult, eh? Like he's attacking a Jumbo train that on paper should still have Kuz at that point. Van Aert should probably still be there at that point in the race. So I don't know. I think it's gonna be really hard to attack on the second last climb for Pogacar. But he achieved it last year, but that's a very different situation, eh? Like this is incomparable compared to Paul Rome Colombier in my
Well, he
opinion.
was better than Carapaz.
Yeah,
So, like, and they had no domestiques left. So, and then the group behind stopped chasing. He's not, from what we've seen, he's not, even if he's, remember, these climbs, Laurent Azé, 8.5K, 7.7%, the draft is important. So even if he's 1% better than Vingegaard on that day, the draft matters more than 1%. Now maybe he gets a gap, but then he's got to do whole descent valley. I don't know. I don't know. If he gets a gap, that sort of advantage him. If Jonas is isolated, maybe he can take time on the descent in the valley where he's a bit heavier. But yeah, that's again, he's got to go early. I actually and his team, he doesn't have the team, Benji, as we've said now, to do an Ineos train to make this stage brutal. Now, I think McNulty, Micah, and Soler are doing really well, but I still don't think they can, like, Col d'Aspin just start revving it at the start. They'll run out of guys.
yep, I think so as well. So I would once again go to the similar thing where they need to try and make sure they've got one big hit in instead of 3 times trying to make it an attrition stage. Because I also think it is better for Pogacar as a rider that it's that one big hit instead of those regular climb pacing until the group is 20 and then try and have an attack with Pogacar, that kind of stuff, eh?
And that brings us to stage 18, the last climbing stage where there's a chance to take time, which is 144 k's from Lourdes to Altacam. It has the Col d'Aubisque, which is the longest climb left in the race, 17.2 k's at 7%. Step descent, then the Col de Spandel, 30-minute climb, 10.4 k's, 8.1%. That's very hard. Descent, no valley of note really, maybe 2 kilometers before straight into the Altacam, 13.6 k's at 7.8%. Nothing to altitude. Again, I think the weather's just normal. 144K stage, so it's not a 200K marathon. Again, I think Pogacar, Benji has to go on Spandels because, like, if you look at Altacam, like the level's so close these days. Like even Pratitativo, when Pogacar had like one of his best days ever, like the gaps are small. Like he beat Simon Yates by 9 seconds, and Altacam is like a 40-minute climb where I don't know. I think he just has to go on Spandel, has to go on the early climbs. Hope there's chaos. Hope Ineos help out because if they just like try and go at 5Ks to go on these climbs, it won't be enough.
I think so as well. And I'll be honest, if we're in a situation where it's still 2 minutes 22 on Otakam, on that stage at least, then he has to go on Spondel because otherwise he's got a very limited amount of chance of remotely winning this unless Vingegaard has a puncture or crashes in the time trial and so forth. So if it's actually a situation of 222, this is where he needs to do that all-out attack to try and win the Tour de France. And if I'm Pogacar, I've won 2 Tour de France's, then I'm willing to give up a potential second spot towards a third spot or something, just in case to win this
He'll try on
Tour de
stage
France.
19.
Yeah, yeah. If he'll
He
try.
will.
If well, is there much opportunity? Doesn't
He'll
need to
try
be,
and
but
get
he'll
in the
try anyway.
rouleur break.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
I agree. I agree. Depends on whether he still needs it. We will see after stage 18 and so forth.
True.
But when I look at the profiles of 17 and 18, Peragut and Otakam, I do feel like Otakam is the kind of stage where it feels better to go early than on 17, for example. But we've mentioned before that 17 is feels better for Pogacar than 18 when it comes to the length of climbs and so forth. But on the other hand, Otakam's only 35, 40 minutes and not 40-minute plus. So I also don't see Pogacar getting in trouble because the climb is too long on this one.
Yeah, and it's not to altitude. It's not going to be scorching hot conditions, and Jumbo Visma don't have the team, at least I don't think anymore, to make the race brutally hard, nor should they. I think, to be honest, now I'll give our predictions. So tomorrow, by the way, for Foix, I should say, I think the break will win, and I think we haven't really mentioned Green's done. Wout's winning green if he doesn't crash. Pogacar's winning yellow. Not yellow. The white jersey. He's only 6 minutes there to Pidcock. Ineos look like they have teams locked up and KOM is very tight, and that should affect the breakaways a lot. Geschke's on 46 points, and there's, as I said on the first one, there's 20 points separating 10th and 1st. Pino hasn't even really started going for this. Pino has to if he has the legs. Like, it's on the plate. I know he probably wants a stage, but, like, Geschke's not the best climber in the world compared to those guys, like Pino level, although Pino's been a bit under. Yeah, I just think the breakaway tomorrow should be a lot of guys trying to get in it, like Paulus, Ciccone, Latour, Perez, Jungels. Who else has gone for it?
Mankeys?
Turns. No, he won't be allowed in his 4 minutes. He won't be allowed in the break.
Ah, you're right. You're right. True. He's too close now. Is that a danger for his battle for KOM where he's second?
He's not going for KOM. He's going to try hold on top 10 GC.
That's true, but I would have liked to see both for
Maybe.
Mankeys.
So tomorrow, I think. Damn, can Michael Matthews win it again? I'm trying to think. Bettiol should really go for it.
Mhm.
I'm going for Bettiol taking the win from the break, or Luis Leon Sanchez, but I like Bettiol a bit more, so I'll go with Bettiol. And I think there'll be a little bit of GC action, but ultimately no gaps behind.
Okay, I'll go for the same guy that won the similar parkour in last year's Tour de France. I think Patrick Conrad. Was
Yes.
was it similar?
Similar, like not as steep, but similar. He
Yeah.
went early.
Steeper probably fits him better, Conrad, because he's actually decent on steep sections for
Eh,
the Ardennes we've had in the past.
eh,
Don't me? Not today. I don't
eh.
accept it.
Camner. I forgot Camner. Yeah. Martinez in the break versus Camner. They'll mark each other out. Camner's marked. Yeah. Okay, you going with Conrad, and I've already forgotten who I said. Bettiol. I'll go with Bettiol for tomorrow's stage. In terms of GC, I think Jonas holds on. I think Wout wins the final TT. I think Pogacar takes a decent bit of time in the TT, but he won't have taken enough beforehand. I think Jonas holds on and wins yellow. I mean, he is the bookie's favorite now, so that's not. He has a 220 gap, so it's not a hot take anymore. What do you think will happen?
Well, the easy thing to say is, oh, Jonas is gonna hold on these mountain stages and so forth, and eventually will win this Tour de France. But I picked Pogacar on stage 1 in the preview. I need to keep my soul where it belongs in the Pogacar camp for now. Where he's gonna do the damage, I don't know. I fear the only way that Jonas really loses time in these climbing stages is if that shoulder hit on the floor actually has a consequence, or actually has some kind of consequence, which I don't wish to him, you know? So I think Vingegaard will hold on, but I hope for the race that Pogacar gains time before the time trial to make it around 1 minute 10 or 1 minute towards the time trial, so that it's a really close fight in the time trial, because that would be godlike.
I'm telling you, 110 won't be enough.
But
He
it's
needs
enough.
40 seconds.
It's
Yeah,
enough
it's
for the
enough to be close
entertainment.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. Everyone will be watching that TT. Even if it's 2 minutes, everyone's going to be watching it. Let's be real. Like, come on. Final TT, you never know what could happen. But yeah, I think Jonas holds on. I'm sure there will be a few wobbles. There'll be a few nervous moments in this week. That's what Pogacar is going to do. I do think Pogacar has spent more. I know that Jonas crashed and you never want to touch the ground because you don't know how your body will react to it. Hopefully he's fine. But I do think Pogacar spent a lot. Now his powers of recovery incredible, but yeah, just like I think Jonas has figured out the Pogacar moves. When Pogacar jumps to Wout, Jonas can just sit on his guys, and Pogacar just burns a little quarter of a match, and he's like, okay, good job. I think they've kind of figured that out, the sprints and stuff. So yeah, we'll see if that has a cost. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Pogacar will come out swinging. Ineos are the real, I think, dark horse in how they plan on playing
Yeah.
this week. If they really come out for the win, that makes Jonas and Jumbo Visma's life significantly more difficult. So here's hoping they do to increase the interest in the race and Thomas wins. But that's all from us. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you with a recap of the stage to Foix tomorrow. Ciao.